Hi, welcome to the Ultimate Sports Blog Podcast. Today is Monday, January 22nd, 2018. Today I'm going to recap the NFL Conference Championship games, go over some NFL coaching hires, recap the weekend it was in the NBA and college hoops, and much more. On to the championship games. The AFC title game, the New England Patriots defeated the Jacksonville Jaguars by a score of 24-20. To advance their second straight Super Bowl in their third in 4 years. Tom Brady yet again terrific, leading the Patriots comeback after they were down 10 points after the end of the third quarter. He had 290 yards and 2 touchdowns. Blake Bortles actually played really well, 293 yards and 1 touchdown, and I think people would be crazy to blame him for the Jaguars' loss just because the Patriots are just so good. The Patriots got on the board first with a field goal to put them up 3-0. And in the second quarter, Jacksonville got their first points, a touchdown pass from Blake Bortles to Mercedes Lewis to get on the board and make it 7-3 in their favor. And 7 minutes later, Leonard Fournette ran in for 4 yards, and Jacksonville had a 14-3 lead. Then Rob Gronkowski gets concussed. And then after that, with less than a minute to go until halftime, James White ran in for 1 yard, and Jacksonville led 14-10 at halftime. Third quarter, Josh Lambo hit a 54-yard field goal to make it 17-10 in favor of Jacksonville. In the very beginning of the fourth quarter, Josh Lambo hit another field goal to make it 20-10 Jacksonville. And then somewhere in the fourth quarter, before the Patriots got within 3, there was a big play made, and Miles Jack recovered a fumble, and Jacksonville had it. They failed to take advantage. And then Danny Amendola caught a touchdown pass to get with the Patriots within 3. And then with 2:48 left to play, Danny Amendola caught yet another touchdown pass from Tom Brady to make it 24-20 Patriots. And that was the ball game. New England moves on to the Super Bowl, and Jacksonville had a great season. It'd be foolish to call their season a failure because they didn't make it to the Super Bowl. Jacksonville was projected to finish last in the AFC South before the season. They ended up winning that division and going to the AFC title game. Doug Marrone deserves consideration for NFL Coach of the Year. I won't be shocked if he wins that award. The NFC Championship game, the Philadelphia Eagles destroyed the Minnesota Vikings by a score of 38-7. Minnesota was favored in this game, and Philadelphia was not. And Philadelphia, to their credit, played a great all-around game to come out with the win. Nick Foles, 352 yards and 3 touchdowns. Case Keenum, 271 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. Minnesota, actually, their lone score of the game came on their first drive of the game. Kyle Rudolph caught a 25-yard touchdown pass from Case Keenum to put themselves on the board 7-0. And then the turning point of this game was a pick 6 by Patrick Robinson of the Eagles off of Case Keenum to get them on the board and tied it at 7. And in the second quarter, LeGarrette Blount ran in a touchdown for 11 yards to make it 14-7. In almost a minute left before the half, Nick Foles threw a 53-yard touchdown pass to Alshon Jeffrey, 21-7 Eagles at halftime. No, wait, I'm sorry. Jake Elliott hit a field goal right at the buzzer of the halftime to make it 24-7 Philly. Minnesota was actually driving, and that was one of the couple turnovers by Case Keenum. And in the third quarter, Nick Foles to Torrey Smith for 41 yards to get a 31-7. And then one more Alshon Jeffrey touchdown from Nick Foles in the fourth quarter to make it 38-7. That was your ball game. Very impressive win for the Eagles. Probably you can make a case that was the best win they've had all season long, destroying the Vikings. And a lot of people are saying that now they have a shot against the Patriots. I think they have a shot, but my pick is to be determined. I have to see how Gronkowski is after that concussion, and the Patriots have some other injuries and stuff too. Brady's hand seems fine, though, that's for sure. And let's go on to some coaching hires. The team that lost last night in the NFC title game, the Minnesota Vikings, is about to lose their offensive coordinator, Pat Shurmur, because he'll be hired as the new head coach of the New York Football Giants. Interesting hire. Shermer failed with the Browns, or not really failed, but he won 9 games in 2 seasons, and well, it's the Browns. That's the case for Shermer. Well, it's the Browns. Nobody does well with the Browns. Even Bill Belichick didn't do great with the Browns. So that's to be determined. Another to be determined, to see how it works out standpoint, the Lions are indeed hiring, or should be hiring, Matt Patricia as their new head coach. Matt Patricia looked like the favorite for the Giants job a week ago, but obviously looks like Patricia's headed to Detroit. That would be, I think, an interesting hire. And same with the Colts potentially snagging away Josh McDaniels, the offensive coordinator from the New England Patriots, away. So that's a fascinating story, how the Patriots are going to lose both their offensive and defensive coordinators to head coaching jobs. So Patricia to the Lions and McDaniels to the Colts. Josh McDaniels failed with the Broncos, underachieved with that team, but the case against it is that Denver didn't have a good quarterback situation when McDaniels coached there, although Denver did have talent on their roster back then. And the other hire that just went down within the last 48 hours or so, the Titans hiring Mike Vrabel, the defensive coordinator of the Houston Texans, away from Bill O'Brien. I think that will be a solid hire because the Texans' defense has been good the last few years, although it wasn't great this year. But that's mainly due to injuries. And today it was announced that Steve Wilks, the defensive coordinator of the Carolina Panthers, will be named the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. I think that's another interesting hire. Wilks has done a good job with Carolina the last few years, and I think that'd be a nice, solid fit in Arizona. College basketball had an interesting weekend. A lot of interesting results, a lot of fascinating things, and we'll get to it right now. Where to start? Florida State Seminoles beat the Virginia Tech Hokies by a score of 91-82. MJ Walker put up 24 points. Justin Robinson from Virginia Tech put up 26. And by the way, I went 1-1 in my picks for the NFL conference title games. I picked New England, and I also picked Minnesota. And back to college hoops. Number 3, Purdue defeated Iowa by a score of 87-64. Purdue is very underrated. Best team in the Big Ten, perhaps. Carson Edwards, another good game for Purdue, 22 points. Luke Garza of Iowa had 19. Purdue's now 19-2, and Iowa is 10-11, and Iowa probably won't make the tournament. Number 2, 22-ranked Ohio State Buckeyes defeated the Minnesota Golden Gophers by a score of 67-49. Ohio State's had a great season. I talked about how Purdue is arguably the best team in the Big Ten. Chris Holton's probably the favorite to win the Big Ten Coach of the Year at this point. Kayeda Bates-Diop of Ohio State put up 17, and Jordan Murphy of Minnesota put up 13. And Ohio State improves to 17-4 as Minnesota's tournament hopes are slipping after being ranked preseason top 25, are dropped to 14-8. Villanova defeated UConn by a score of 81-61. Villanova clearly the best team in college basketball by a mile. Jalen Brunson of Villanova put up 23 points, and Jalen Adams of UConn put up 19. And Villanova is now 18-1. And like I said, clearly the best team in college basketball. And UConn's been disappointing this season as they dropped to 10-9. Number 7, Wichita State lost again, this time on the road to Houston by a score of 73-59. Houston actually got destroyed at Wichita State a few weeks ago, and give Houston credit for revenge here. And this is actually a good result for the AAC because it helps Houston's at-large case. And Rob Gray of Houston put up 24 to lead the way for the Cougars, and Shaquille Morris put up 12 for the Shockers. The Shockers dropped to 15-4. And like I said, Houston making a case for an at-large from the AAC as they improve to 15-4 as well. The Vanderbilt defeated LSU 77-71. That's a bad loss for LSU, a team that's looking for an at-large bid. 31 points for Duop Reith. And Vanderbilt Riley LaChance put up 26. Vanderbilt probably isn't going to make the tournament. LSU, probably a bubble team right now, if not in the NIT, for sure, as of right now. Rhode Island is now ranked. They defeated Dayton by a score of 88-74. Jared Terrell of Rhode Island put up 24, and Josh Cunningham of Dayton put up 32. And Rhode Island is now 15-3 and deserving of their number 24 ranking that just came out in the AP poll. So good for Rhode Island. Like I said, the rankings this week are really interesting. Number 15 ranked North Carolina defeated Georgia Tech by a score of 80-66. UNC improves to 16-4. Luke May put up 17 points for them. And Josh Okagi of Georgia Tech put up 18 as Georgia Tech drops to 10-9 and probably won't make the tournament. Northwestern got a big win on its home turf or home court, 70-61 over Penn State. Northwestern improves to 10-9. Bad loss for Penn State, drops to 13-8, and at-large hopes going away. Vic Law of Northwestern put up 18, and Shep Gardner of Penn State put up 22. So, yeah, big win for Northwestern, bad loss for Penn State there. We'll see what happens to those teams. Northwestern was ranked preseason top 25, has failed to live up to expectations. Butler got a big road win at DePaul by a score of 79-67. It was a much-needed road win for Butler as they improved to 14-7 to help their at-large case. Kalon Martin put up 24 points, and Max Strauss of DePaul put up 27. DePaul's a bad team. They're not going anywhere. Number 8, Texas Tech got upset on the road by Iowa State by a score of 70-52. Bad loss for Texas Tech. Nice win for Iowa State, who improves to 11-7 and is suddenly looking like a candidate to get an at-large. Could you imagine all 10 Big 12 teams getting an at-large? I don't think that's going to happen, but that's a conversation worth having if the bottom teams of that league continue to be getting wins over top 10 teams in their own conference, as Texas Tech drops to 15-4. Zaire Smith of Texas Tech put up 10, and Cameron Lard for Iowa State put up 18. So yeah, Big 12 very interesting right now. And I'll get to more Big 12 results as I go on this podcast and as I skim through these results. Also, speaking of the Big 12, a couple more from that conference. A great game in Stillwater. Oklahoma State defeated Oklahoma, who was number 4 at the time, by a score of 83-81 in overtime. Oklahoma State improves to 13-6. Oklahoma drops to 14-4. Trae Young, 48 points, but on 39 shots and made only 14 field goals. Not a ton of turnovers in that game, too. Jeffrey Carroll of Oklahoma State put up 23 points. Oklahoma State got a good resume win right there to improve their at-large chances. West Virginia bounced back from 2 brutal losses by a score of 86-51 over a good Texas team. So that's a very impressive win by the Mountaineers, who improved to 16-3. Texas drops to 12-7. Mohamed Bamba of Texas only had 9 points, and Javon Carter of West Virginia put up 22. West Virginia has a big game tonight against TCU. I'll preview that in a little while. West Virginia only dropped 1 spot in the rankings. They're 6 last week, now dropped to 7. Only the bad Kansas blown loss only dropped them 1 spot. But that just shows to how much respect they have gained from the media. And speaking of ranked teams and stuff, Xavier defeated Seton Hall 73-64. Xavier was 11, Seton Hall's 19. Seton Hall's now unranked. Xavier moved up in the rankings to 8. JP Makura of Xavier put up 27 points, and Desi Rodriguez of Seton Hall put up 19. As Xavier improves to Xavier improves to 18-3, and Seton Hall drops to 15-5. Xavier's quietly been on a good run lately, and after that loss to Villanova, that pretty much everybody saw coming. They've actually bounced back nicely after that, so I gotta give Xavier and Chris Mack some credit. Providence defeated Creighton by a score of 85-71. That was a big win for Providence, and I picked Providence on the podcast. I'm going to go over my picks in a minute. 14-6, Providence improves to, and Creighton drops to 15-5. Marcus Foster of Creighton put up 22, and Alpha Diallo of Providence put up 21. Both of these teams are probably headed for at-larges. They're both decent teams. Arkansas defeated Ole Miss by a score of 97-93. Arkansas improves their at-large chances. I don't see Ole Miss getting in unless they go on a nice run. Arkansas improves to 13-6, and Ole Miss drops to 10-9. Terrence Davis of Ole Miss put up 30, and Jalen Barford of Arkansas put up 23. And that's a big-time win. Not big-time win, but a big win for Arkansas to keep their at-large hopes alive. Number 20, Clemson defeated Notre Dame 67-58. Clemson did not have a good weekend, and I'll get to it more in a minute. And Gabe DeVoe of Clemson put up 17, and TJ Gibbs of Notre Dame put up 18. Notre Dame drops to 13-7. I don't see them getting in the tournament unless Bonzie Colson comes back early. Clemson improves to 16-3. Like I said, they did not have a good weekend. I'll get into it more in a minute. Duke, meanwhile, had an excellent weekend. They defeated Pitt by a score of 81-54. Duke's number 5 at the time. They moved up in the rankings since then. Probably I don't know the rankings by heart, the new ones. Duke is now 17-2, and Pitt dropped to 8-12. Pitt's terrible. Duke's got to defeat Pitt by a big margin, especially on their home turf or home court. Wendell Carter Jr. put up 21 for Duke. Parker Stewart put up 15 for Pitt. I'll get into why Duke had an incredible weekend, as to why Clemson had a bad weekend in a minute, like I said. Texas A&M defeated Missouri by a score of 60-49. That was a big win for Texas A&M, who got off to a bad start within the conference and has now improved to 13-6. Mizzou drops to 13-6, and both of these teams are on the bubble right now. If Mizzou can get Porter Jr. back at some point in February or March, look out. Like, that could be your sleeper in that conference, especially in the SEC tournament. Tani Torca Moralos put up 14 for Texas A&M, and Jeremiah Tillman of Missouri put up 9. Number 12, Cincinnati defeated East Carolina by a score of 86-60. Cincinnati moved up to number 9 in the 8 people, so I got to give them some love there. Cincinnati's one of the more underrated teams in the country, and they play in the same conference as Wichita State now, and I've praised Wichita State on this podcast a couple times, but I need to get Cincinnati the love that they deserve because they're a pretty good team themselves. Kyle Washington put up 17 for the Bearcats, and for the Pirates, Sean Williams put up 15. Gary Clark's a great player on Cincinnati. He had a double-double of 14 points and 14 rebounds. And as CBS Sports, as John Rothstein would post on Twitter, Gary Clark is a problem for opposing teams. Number 14, Arizona defeated Stanford by a score of 73-71. I predicted a Stanford win on this podcast. I was wrong, and I was almost right. I came close to being right, but I was wrong. Stanford drops to 11-9. They're at large hopes slipping away. Arizona improves to 16-4. They are now 11 in the new AP poll that just came out. Alonzo Trier put up 21 for Arizona. Reed Travis put up 20 for Stanford. So that was a big win for Arizona because I really thought Stanford had a legit chance to win that game. Like I said, I picked them to win. I was ultimately wrong. An upset I did get correct on this podcast, although this team probably was favored. Kansas State defeated TCU by a score of 73-68. TCU is no longer ranked. They were 24th going into that Kansas State game, but they lost. Both teams are now 14-5. Dean Wade of Kansas State put up 20, and Vladimir Brodzinski of TCU put up 15. Jalen Fisher out for the year for TCU. That's a bad injury, and could affect the Big 12 race, and who knows, maybe it impacts TCU's chances of an at-large, because I think Jalen Fisher was a very underrated player and did really well for the Horned Frogs and Jamie Dixon. Tennessee defeated South Carolina by a score of 70-63. Tennessee was ranked 21st, improves to 13-5. South Carolina drops to 12-7 after that upset win over Kentucky. They kind of had a letdown here against Tennessee. Lamonte Turner, great for Tennessee, put up 25 points, and Justin Minia of South Carolina put up 16 for the Gamecocks. Number 17 Auburn defeated Georgia by a score of 79-65. That was a big win for Auburn. They had a couple losses recently, most notably against Alabama. Auburn improves to 17-2. Georgia drops to 12-6. Georgia still has a shot in at-large, in my opinion, considering that the SEC is kind of weaker, but at the same time it's more balanced than it usually is. Bryce Brown of Auburn put up 28 points, and Yante Mayton of Georgia put up 17. There's another big-time SEC result that I have to get to, and it's very, very fascinating. I'm not there yet. Washington defeated Colorado in Boulder by a score of 72-62. Big win for Washington to improve their at-large chances. They improved to 14-6. Bad loss for Colorado, who drops to 12-8. Tyler Bay of Colorado put up 14, and Jalen Noel of Washington put up 19. Kansas defeated Baylor by a score of 70-67. Kansas had to work hard to get that one. That's been the case for most of their games in Big 12 play this season. They were 10 at the time. They definitely moved up after a good week Kansas had. They improved to 16-3. Baylor drops to 12-7. Malik Newman led the way for Kansas with 24 points. Joe Luol-Akil Jr. of Baylor put up 14. Baylor's at-large hopes are slipping as Kansas is making like an interesting, compelling case for a top 2 seed, especially after that win against West Virginia on Monday night. And should be very interesting because Kansas has a big game tomorrow in Norman against Oklahoma, and I'll pick it on this podcast in a couple minutes. Where's that SEC result I want to get to? Gonzaga defeated Santa Clara by a score of 75-60. Gonzaga dropped to 15 in the rankings after being 13 because they lost to St. Mary's, but that's okay. They rebound with the win here against Santa Clara, improved to 17-4. Santa Clara is not one of the good teams in their conference in the WCC. They dropped to 7-13. Josh Perkins led the way for Gonzaga with 17 points, and KG Fagan of Santa Clara had 21 points. Like I said, Gonzaga dropped to 15 in the rankings. Not terrible. But yeah, there's an SEC result on here that I needed to get to badly. I see it, but I have one more game to go over, which is USC getting a big road win in Corvallis by a score of 74-67 over Oregon State. USC improves to 15-6. And improves their at-large chances. Meanwhile, bad loss for Oregon State drops to 11-8 to hurt their chances of an at-large. Trace Tinkle of Oregon State put up 21 points. Elijah Stewart of the Trojans put up 18. The big SEC result, I'm finally at it. Florida defeated then ranked number 18 Kentucky in Rupp Arena by a score of 66-64. Big time win for Florida. Improves to 14-5. Meanwhile, Kentucky drops to 14-5. Wenyen Gabriel of Kentucky put up 10. Jalen Hudson of Florida put up 17. Florida's really, really good. They had a couple bad losses about a month ago, but now are ranked again and deserve to be ranked again. Meanwhile, Kentucky is no longer ranked as of right now. And I don't think they'll re-rank next week either because of a certain game they have this weekend that I'll get to on Friday's podcast. Alabama defeated Mississippi State by a score of 68-62. Alabama improves to 13-6 and Mississippi State drops to 14-5. Both of these teams are bubble teams in my opinion. Braxton Key of Alabama put up 16 and Lamar Peters of Mississippi State put up 17. We shall see how these two teams end up come March because those are two bubble teams. I'm very fascinated by the bubble teams and stuff. St. Mary's now ranked, defeated Pacific by a score of 72-69, following up that big win over Gonzaga with a narrow win over Pacific. Pacific actually led at halftime of that game. Jock Landell of St. Mary's put up 32 points. Lafayette Dorsey of Pacific put up 18. St. Mary's improves to 19-2 and is now ranked 16th in the AP poll, and that's a well-deserved ranking, especially after beating Gonzaga in Spokane. And Pacific, not one of the good teams in the West Coast Conference, drops to 10-11. So that's another notable result that I had to hit on because St. Mary's is now ranked, and they followed up the big Gonzaga win with a narrow road win. Speaking of newly ranked teams, the new number 23 ranked Nevada defeated Boise State by a score of 74-68. Nevada improves to 18-3. Boise drops to 16-4. The MWC is improved, and it could be a multi-bid league again. Caleb Martin of Nevada put up 28, and Chandler Hutchinson of Boise State put up 27. I think both of these teams are in the mix for at-larges come March. Oregon defeated UCLA by a score of 94-91. Big win for Oregon after losing to USC the other night. Oregon improves to 13-7. UCLA drops to 13-7. These are two bubble teams too, in my opinion. Peyton Pritchard of Oregon put up 25 points, and Chris Wilkes of UCLA put up 21. Arizona State, then number 16 Arizona State, they dropped to 21, defeated Cal by a score of 81-73. That was a big win for Arizona State. They improved to 15-4. Cal drops to 7-13. Cal's clearly the worst team in the Pac-12 this year. Trey Holder of Arizona State put up 13, and Marcus Lee of Cal put up 23. So Arizona State's interesting because, like I said, they've lost a couple conference games. They've been very inconsistent in conference play after going undefeated in conference play. Air Force had to cancel or postpone their game against Fresno State on Saturday due to the government issues. That's another story for another day. Sunday's college hoops games. Louisville defeated Boston College by a score of 77-69. Louisville improves to 15-4. Boston College drops to 13-7. Boston College is a bubble team. Louisville, I think, will end up getting in. Dane Goodell of Louisville put up 18. Jerome Robinson of Boston College put up 19. I think Boston College might end up getting in because of that upset win over Duke, and Duke's a top 5 team, and I think that could single-handedly get them in because I've seen not-so-great teams with big upset wins single-handedly get in at-large because of that big upset win, like UCLA a couple years ago, undeserving of an at-large getting in because pretty much because they beat Kentucky. And Miami defeated NC State by a score of 86-81. Miami's no longer ranked. They're 14-4 now. NC State drops to 13-7. I still think Miami ends up making the tournament. And same with NC State. Like I said, for Boston College, same could be said for NC State. That win over Duke looms large for the Wolfpack. Omer Yosefson of the Wolfpack put up 28 points, and Bruce Brown Jr. of Miami put up 19. Like I said, big win for the Hurricanes, although they're no longer ranked. Number 23 ranked Michigan beat Rutgers by a score of 62-47. Michigan dropped to 25 in the polls because they lost bad at Nebraska last week. Michigan improves to 17-5. Rutgers drops to 12-9. Corey Sanders of Rutgers have 12 points, and Moritz Wagner of Michigan put up 16. I don't think Rutgers makes the tournament. Michigan, I think, will. And two more notable results from Sunday. You had Virginia defeat Wake Forest by a score of 59-49. Virginia, number 2 in the country, improves to 18-1. Virginia is awesome. You can make a case that they can win the ACC. They're probably not the favorites. I'd say Duke's the favorite to win that conference, but UVA should be in the conversation. And Wake drops to 8-11. Wake's not good this year, so Virginia had to go and get that win. Kyle Guy of Virginia put up 17 points. Bryant Crawford of Wake put up 11. And the last result I wanted to touch on from Sunday in terms of college basketball was Utah defeating Washington State by a score of 82-69. Utah improves to 12-7. Washington State drops to 9-10. Washington State probably not making the tournament. Utah has a shot at an at-large. They look like a bubble team to me right now. Tyler Rawson of Utah put up 22 points, and Malachi Flynn of Washington State put up 19 points. And I'm going to go over my picks for college basketball right now. I did not do that great this week in college basketball, but I did okay. I went 24-10. I picked a couple road favorites that I probably should have considered the home underdogs in. And I picked a couple home underdogs that I probably should have considered the road favorite. I picked Villanova to defeat UConn, and they did that in style, as I predicted. And I believe I said on this podcast that Villanova would win by 20. I did correctly predict Purdue to beat Iowa. I whiffed on Wichita State. I picked them to beat Houston. I was wrong. I picked Ohio State to defeat Minnesota. I got that correct. I predicted Virginia Tech to defeat Florida State. I whiffed there. I picked LSU to win against Vanderbilt. I was wrong there. Vanderbilt won. Oklahoma State over Oklahoma, I got correct. That was a good pick. West Virginia to bounce back after those 2 bad losses, I correctly predicted, but I didn't think they'd blow out Texas because I actually think Texas is a good team. I did not predict Iowa State to defeat Texas Tech, and that happened. I correctly predicted Carolina to defeat Georgia Tech. I correctly predicted Northwestern to beat Penn State. I incorrectly picked Seton Hall over Xavier. Xavier won that game. I correctly predicted Providence to defeat Creighton. I correctly predicted Arkansas to defeat Ole Miss. I correctly predicted Duke to beat Pitt and Cincinnati to beat East Carolina. I whiffed on Stanford. That was one of my upset picks. I was wrong there. I took Clemson over Notre Dame. That was a good pick. I took Kansas State over TCU. That was a good pick. Kansas State was actually favored in that game. And I got Auburn correct. They defeated... Who did Auburn defeat? Georgia. I obviously got Kansas over Baylor right, although I had to sweat that one out. I got Texas A&M over Missouri right. I picked South Carolina upset Tennessee. I got that wrong. Credit to Rick Barnes and company for that one. And South Carolina a little bit of a letdown after beating Kentucky on their home court. I incorrectly predicted Colorado to defeat Washington. Washington won that game outright. Credit to Washington. USC I got correct. I picked them to defeat... Who did USC beat? I'm blanking on that one. I'll think of it. Oregon State. I think it was Oregon. Yeah, Oregon State because UCLA played Oregon. Yeah, I did pick USC to win in Corvallis. So that was it. I incorrectly predicted the Wildcats of Kentucky to beat the Florida Gators on their home floor. The Gators came out and won that game. I have to give credit to the Gators. That was a great win. And a lot of people are speculating whether Kentucky might actually end up being a bubble team rather than a surefire tournament team at this point. I predicted Alabama to win, so that was a correct pick by me. I picked them to beat Mississippi State. I picked Oregon to defeat UCLA. I was right there. And I picked Arizona State to defeat Cal. I was obviously right there. I obviously picked Michigan over Rutgers. I whiffed on NC State. I thought they'd spring up another upset because they beat Duke and Clemson. I thought they'd beat Miami, but I was wrong. And I probably overreacted to Miami's loss against Duke on their home turf or on home court because Duke is, like I said, top 5 team in the country. And I also got the Louisville pick correct over Boston College. I also picked Virginia to beat Wake Forest. And I also picked Utah to defeat Washington State. NBA. I whiffed big time on NBA. On the ESPN doubleheader from Friday night, I went 0 for 2. I picked Detroit to defeat Washington. I was wrong. The Wizards came out and beat the Pistons by a score of 122 to 112. And Kelly Oubre led the way for Washington with 26 points. Tobias Harris, who might be an all-star reserve for the Eastern Conference, put up 17 for the Pistons in the loss. Detroit's falling apart. Now they're under 500. And the other game I whiffed on from Friday night was Utah. I picked them to beat the Knicks, but I was wrong. New York came away with the rare road win by a score of 117 to 115. Tim Hardaway Jr. led the way for New York with 31 points. Rudy Gobert came back from injury in that game against the Knicks, and he put up 23 points. And by the way, the Knicks followed up the Utah win with an ugly defeat at Staples Center against the Lakers. And the Lakers didn't even have Lonzo Ball or Brandon Ingram. Oh, Ingram played. It was Ball and somebody else was injured on the Lakers. Another notable Laker was hurt in that game, and the Knicks laid an egg in Los Angeles. Although they did lead in the third quarter, it was the fourth quarter where they really fell apart in that Lakers game. And then Saturday, the Oklahoma City Thunder, with one of the more impressive wins you'll see, going to Cleveland and beat the Cavaliers by a score of 148 to 124. I don't think anybody saw that coming. That was a big-time win for Oklahoma City. Paul George put up 36 points for Oklahoma City. Isaiah Thomas had 24 for the Cavaliers, and that's a season high for Thomas. And the big three for Oklahoma City played well. Oklahoma City's rocking now. That was a big-time win for them. And the other game I whiffed on, I picked the Warriors to defeat the Rockets, and I got that wrong as the Rockets defeated the Warriors by a score of 116-108. That was an impressive win. Kevin Durant put up 26 in a loss, and Chris Paul put up 33 in a win. And like I said, I picked the Cavs on Saturday afternoon to beat the Thunder. I was obviously dead wrong there. I'm going to make 2 picks for the TNT doubleheader for tomorrow night. The Cavs go to San Antonio to play the Spurs. I'm taking San Antonio. I think they win that game by double digits, sans all the Kawhi stuff. I'm going to say the Spurs win 110. Give me 110-99. I think the Spurs defense shows up. LaMarcus Aldridge will have a big game for the Spurs. He's been excellent this year and is a deserving all-star for the Western Conference. And they announced the reserves on Thursday for the all-star games. I want to see if I get my reserves right because I nailed all 10 starters for each conference, and I'm proud of that. And the second game of the TNT doubleheader for Tuesday night is the Boston Celtics going to Staples Center to face the Lakers. Give me the Celtics on the road. The Lakers have some injuries. The Celtics are just a way better team than the Lakers at this point. Give me the Celtics by a score of 113-100. and I say Kyrie Irving leads the way. I won't be shocked if the Lakers give him a game through 3 quarters. And I'll make a prediction. I think that Spurs game might be a blowout, and the Cavs might make it look close late. I said 110-99 for that game. But I'm going to say that with an asterisk because I think the Spurs will blow them out, and then Cleveland will kind of make it look like that margin, but it really shouldn't be that margin. And on the flip side, I could see the Lakers being in that game for 3.5 quarters, and then Kyrie Irving and the Celtics taking off. I'm going to make some picks for college hoops for Monday and Tuesday now. Or I should say tonight and tomorrow. Number 10 ranked North Carolina takes on Virginia Tech in Blacksburg. Give me Virginia Tech for the upset here. Carolina's a 3.5-point favorite. Carolina was actually -4, now it's down to 3.5. That's in my favor, and I really like the Hokies here, although I won't be shocked if the Tar Heels come away with the win, considering that they're favored and ranked. Maryland goes to Indiana. Maryland's in the conversation for an at-large. I'm going to say their at-large chances take a hit because I think Indiana pulls off the upset. Maryland's a 1-point favorite. I think that's another upset. Iowa State goes to Austin to face the Texas Longhorns. Both of these teams need this game. Give me Texas to win. They're a 7-point favorite, but I like Iowa State to cover, Texas to win. Ohio State hosts Nebraska. Give me Ohio State to win big there to improve to 18-4. Ohio State is now 13 in the country, and they are deserving of that ranking for sure. Number 6 ranked Michigan State goes to Champaign to play Illinois. That could be a trap game, but I don't see it. Give me Sparty to improve to 18-3 with Miles Bridges leading the way. Baylor hosts Kansas State. Baylor really needs this game, and I think they'll get it. And I think it's going to be close. And I'm going to say Kansas State covers the 5. I'm going to say that's a 2 or 3 point Baylor win, maybe even a 4 point Baylor win. Wouldn't rule out a push either. Number 7 ranked West Virginia goes to TCU to face the Horned Frogs. I considered taking TCU here. West Virginia is a 3-point favorite. We're a 2-point favorite now, a 3-point favorite. That's in my favor. I'm taking the Mountaineers here on the road. TCU hasn't been that great in conference play, lost a couple questionable games. I think it's a close game. I think that screams push. I think West Virginia wins by 3. I would have liked that line. If I had to bet the line it down to 2 or 2.5, I would have gladly considered taking West Virginia against the spread. But West Virginia is -3, and I think that's a push. So give me the Mountaineers to win and push there. Tuesday's games. Georgia hosts Arkansas in a big SEC game. Give me Georgia at home. Providence goes to Villanova. Villanova is by far in the way the best team in college basketball. They'll win that game big at home. Clemson travels to Virginia. Give me Virginia. And Virginia will improve its resume. Clemson's now 18 in the country, and Virginia's number 2. And give me Virginia, and I think it's a closer game than people think, because I think Clemson's a good team. Tennessee hosts Vanderbilt. Tennessee's now 22 in the rankings. They'll beat Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's arguably the worst team in the SEC this season. The best game on Tuesday night, you have number 5 Kansas going to Norman to face Trae Young and number 12 Oklahoma Sooners. Give me the Sooners and Trae Young to bounce back from that difficult overtime loss in Stillwater. And speaking of Stillwater, Oklahoma State travels to Texas Tech. I think Texas Tech wins, and they're now 14th in the country after dropping a few games last week. Give me Texas Tech to bounce back. Oklahoma's going to have a letdown after that big win over the Sooners. So give me the Rail Raiders at home. Alabama faces Ole Miss. Give me Alabama on the road. I don't think Ole Miss is making the tournament. Alabama needs this win to improve its at-large case. So give me the Tide. Creighton goes to St. John's. Give me Creighton. They have to have this game. That'd be bad if they lost to St. John's, and St. John's is not good this year. They have a lot of injuries that they're dealing with. Number 4 ranked Duke goes to Wake Forest. I think Duke wins big, so give me the Blue Devils tomorrow night on the road. Northwestern, Minnesota is a big game. Minnesota is kind of a bubble team. I think Northwestern's headed to the NIT. They've fallen short of expectations. Give me Minnesota to improve its at-large chances, although if Northwestern can steal this one, that makes an interesting conversation for their case. LSU hosts Texas A&M. Give me LSU to bounce back after their loss to Vanderbilt and defeat the Aggies on their home court. Kentucky hosts Mississippi State. I think Kentucky bounces back from their loss against Florida here to improve this 15-5. And that's it for the college basketball picks. And one last thing on college basketball, Zion Williamson, one of the top recruits in the country, verbally committed to Duke on Saturday night. This is an upset considered by many people, including myself. I thought he was going to go to Clemson. A lot of people thought he was going to go to Clemson. And that's why Duke had an excellent weekend and Clemson had a disastrous weekend despite their win over Notre Dame. And everyone and their brother thought that Williamson was going to go to Clemson. But no, he took the Blue Devils because of Krzyzewski and because of that culture there. And Krzyzewski now has the top 3 recruits in this class. And the other thing why Clemson had a disastrous weekend is because one of their best players, Dante Grandin, tore his ACL and is now out for the season. When I mentioned the Fisher injury for TCU, I thought about bringing this up, but I want to bring it up now as we were talking about Clemson's bad weekend and Duke's great weekend. So, yeah, that's a bad injury for Clemson. I still think Clemson's going to make the tournament, though, and they'll be fine. So that's it for today's podcast. I'll be back Wednesday to recap all my picks and stuff and preview and pick college basketball games between Wednesday and Thursday and the NBA games on Wednesday and Thursday on ESPN and TNT respectively. I hope you guys have a nice week, everybody.